Mary, the heart of mission. Father Mermier's Marian vision. Dear brothers and sisters, to speak about Father Mermier is to speak about a man whose missionary heart beat in unison with the tender heart of Mary. In the depths of his suffering, in the heights of his spiritual fervor, and in the humbling valleys of illness and humiliation, Father Mermier discovered the maternal presence of Mary, the mother of compassion. For him, Mary was not merely a figure of theological devotion, but a living mother, an intimate guide, and a constant source of transformation. His writings and letters reveal how profoundly he lived under her mantle. Today, we reflect on what Father Mermier says about Mother Mary, what she meant to him, how she shaped his life and vocation, and what lessons we as religious and missionaries can draw from his deep Marian devotion. First point for our reflection today is Mary, the mother of graces and transformation. Father Mermier's experience of Mary was deeply personal and transformative. He speaks of a long, costly, painful, and dangerous pilgrimage undertaken after his healing, inspired by Our Lady of Lazaret. This journey was not only physical but profoundly spiritual. Among the innumerable favors I received daily from this good mother, I count as the most notable the grace of being granted the time to see how I stand before God and men after so hollow and dissipated a life, says Father Mermier. Mary, for Father Mermier, was the mediatrix of the grace of self knowledge, that painful but redemptive awareness of one's own sinfulness and need for mercy. She guided him not only to healing but also to a new identity. Mary taught me to be a different man, a man more humble, more gentle, more mortified, says Father Mermier. Through Mary's intercession, his health crisis became a school of holiness. She was not a distant intercessor, but a teacher, guiding him through humility, gentleness, and mortification, virtues essential for a missionary. The second point for our reflection today is Mary and the grace of humiliation. A recurring theme in Mermier's reflections is humiliation, not as a defeat, but as divine favor. He writes, "This state of humiliation, which lasted over a year, is the greatest honor that the Holy Virgin could have obtained for me." For Father Mermier, humiliation is grace. It is Mary's way of conforming the soul to Christ. His weakness, his inability to go faster, his slowed life, all became channels of spiritual depth. He says, "My present condition is infinitely consoling because in this condition I feel that it is good for me to be humiliated." Mary, he says, practically forced me to belong entirely to her. This is not coercion, but a holy insistence, the persistent love of a mother who wills the sanctification of her child. The third point for our reflection today is Mary and the spirit of solitude and prayer. Lazaret, the place of Mermier's healing, becomes for him a school of solitude. He writes, "Lazaret preaches to us retirement, and in retirement, solitude. I will lead her to a secret place, and there I will speak to her heart." Solitude in the Marian tradition is not escape but encounter. It is the quiet space where God and the soul meet. Inspired by Mary, Mermier found strength in silence and communion in contemplation. Even when infirm and half blind, he discerned that solitude was better for him, that it allowed him to live in a more interior union with Mary and through her with God. The fourth point for reflection today, Mary as a model of missionary virtue. While Marian devotion often takes sentimental expressions, Father Mermier's love for Mary was profoundly missionary. In a New Year message to the sisters, he wrote, "May Jesus Christ and His Holy Mother make this star to rise over us in order to lead us also to His holy crib, to proclaim Him as our God by the incense of our prayer, as our King with the gold of our almsgiving and our zeal for our neighbor, as our Savior and our model by the myrrh of our mortifications and by the faithful observance of our rules." This beautiful vision links Mary's maternal guidance with our zeal, almsgiving, prayer, mortification, and fidelity to our religious life. To be Marian, in Mermier's understanding, is to be deeply rooted in virtue and mission. The fifth point for our reflection today is Mary and the apostolic foundations of the congregation. On the feast of the presentation, Mermier rejoiced not only in Mary's holiness, but in her intercession for the foundations of the missionaries of St. Francis de Sales. Thanks to Mary, after the second novena made especially to Our Lady, the Cardinal Prefect consented to examine the constitution and rules, says Father Mermier. For him, Mary was a co-foundress. Her prayers and presence were part of the very birth and growth of the congregation. Moreover, he initiated the Confraternity of Our Lady of $7, a devotion close to St. Francis de Sales and deeply attuned to Mary's suffering love. The sixth point for our reflection today is Mary and the liturgical and devotional life. Mermier's deep love for Mary flourished within the Church's liturgical life. He speaks with joy of celebrating Mass at the shrine of Loreto, where he offered Mary his prayers and the fervor of St. Francis de Sales. Participating in the beautiful month of Mary, offering her flowers in exchange for fruits of her virtues. Praying the litanies of the Blessed Virgin, calling them a detailed and pious explanation of the qualities, greatness, and glorious titles of Mary. His devotion was not abstract. It was daily, practical, joyful, rooted in church feasts, pilgrimages, and communal celebrations. The seventh point for our reflection today is Mary, a loving presence in the sufferings of life. Perhaps most movingly, Father Mermier experiences Mary not in physical visions or extraordinary favors, but in the ordinary endurance of pain. How does Mary make her appearance? Nothing extraordinary. I need to live in humility and modesty. All I wish is to please God alone. Is that not all I need? Asked Father Mermier. Even here, we see his spiritual maturity. He does not demand signs or consolations. He is content that Mary accompanies him silently, teaching him to be gentle and humble. He saw Mary as the mother of compassion, a powerful advocate for the suffering. In this, he speaks directly to those of us who suffer, reminding us that Mary is near, especially in our desolation. The eighth point for our reflection today is Mary and the Magnificat of the Mission. Father Mermier's love for Mary culminates in mission. At the shrine of Loreto, reflecting on the beautiful countryside, he meditates on Mary's Magnificat. How beautiful the countryside of Loreto, so pleasing and so rich. I took delight in meditating on the beautiful canticle of Our Lady of Loreto, the Magnificat, says Father Mermier. This canticle becomes the song of his soul's song of humility, service, and radical trust. Like Mary, he chooses to magnify the Lord in his poverty, sickness, and mission. To conclude, a Marian model for us today. Dear brothers and sisters, what does Father Mermier teach us about Mary? He teaches us that Mary is not distant but deeply involved in our transformation. Mary humbles us to lift us toward holiness. Mary draws us into solitude not to isolate us but to speak to our hearts. Mary forms us into missionaries who are prayerful, mortified, zealous, and faithful. Mary walks with us in our suffering, gently mothering us through the valleys of illnesses and despair. Father Mermier once wrote, I can say in summary up that the Most Holy Virgin has practically forced me and continues to force me to belong entirely to her. And to continue doing so, I have utter trust now and I will continue always with still more trust. Let this be our prayer too, to belong entirely to Mary, not as sentiment, but as surrender, not as decoration, but as direction. Let us let her form us into gentle, humble, mortified, and zealous missionaries, just as she did with Father Mermier. Live Jesus.